I recently heard an audio clip from a success coach, let's call him Rudy, who said, "You have no self-control. Your willpower sucks. Thinking you have discipline is delusional." He also said, "There is an all-powerful alternative, a way to, quote, beat the odds and win despite your sucky willpower." His solution? The only way to win is not to play at all. Rudy continued, "The only way to win in a wrestling match with your willpower is not to play. Never give in to terrorists," he said, "and the terrorist is your willpower." So, for now, let's ignore the confusing idea that you can win without playing. I think I can clear up what he was really trying to say in just a minute. First things first, and let me be super clear. You are not fighting against your willpower. Willpower is your friend, not your opponent. Your willpower helps you fight against whatever behavior you want to stop, start, or continue doing. Let me say that again. Your willpower is a powerful resource that helps you fight against whatever it is you want to stop, start, or continue doing. Now, I'm not picking on Rudy, the success coach. From what I can tell, he's really and truly an amazing guy. I think the real problem here is not that his actual message was wrong, but that he just got way off track in his attempt to communicate the message. So, what was Rudy's real message buried underneath those unfortunate analogies? Simple. Clear goals and bright lines. Rudy gave a personal example of his choice to not eat any type of bread. No exceptions, ever. For him, it's a hard and fast rule. To borrow a phrase from Henry Morton Stanley in my previous podcast episode, bread is Rudy's, quote, unholy desire and low passion, end quote. And he decided to be ruthless in opposing bread. In his words, he decided to, quote, make the choice once, end quote, and then never look back or ever have to make that choice again. Now, I think what he was pointing at is what psychologists call pre-commitment. That's locking yourself into a virtuous path through clear goals and bright lines, and then making unwanted behaviors as impossible or unthinkable as possible. In his phenomenal book, Willpower, Dr. Roy Baumeister tells the story of guitar hero Eric Clapton and his struggle with alcohol. After a stint in rehab, Clapton remained sober for several years before driving past a crowded pub one summer night, and his natural savagery got the best of him, luring him inside. That one decision nearly cost Clapton everything, until one night he sank to his knees and he begged for help, with no real notion as to whether or not there was even a God who was listening to him. He only knew that he was at the end of his rope and he had nothing left to fight with. No willpower, no self-control, no discipline, no strength, and very little hope. That night, Clapton says, he did something very out of character. He completely surrendered. Since that moment, he has prayed every morning and every night and has never seriously considered taking another drink since, even in the worst of circumstances. Dr. Baumeister says that, like Clapton, before his surrendering experience, we can ignore temptations when they're not immediately available, but once they're right in front of us, we often lose perspective and forget our distant goals. That's what Clapton did that summer night. The trick is not to allow yourself to look at that one exception as if it were some isolated event. You have to see it for what it really is, a precedent that will establish a long-term pattern of making exceptions, of bending the rules. For Clapton to continue resisting the temptation to drink again, he had to be confident that he wouldn't yield to temptation tomorrow or the next day. He needed the help of what Dr. Baumeister calls clear goals and bright lines. Clear, simple, unambiguous, unassailable rules. For Clapton, that meant no more drinking, ever, under any circumstance. If you promise yourself to drink or smoke or any sort of indulgence moderately, that's not a bright line. It's a fuzzy boundary. In contrast, zero tolerance is a bright line. You need total abstinence with no exceptions, anytime. Once you've committed to following a bright line rule, your present self can feel confident that your future self will also observe the same rule. And bonus, if you happen to believe that rule in question is sacred, that it's a commandment from God, the unquestionable law of a higher power, then it becomes an especially bright line. I think that's what Rudy the success coach meant by choosing not to play in order to win. By choosing not to do battle against the temptation of alcohol, Clapton never had to worry about losing that battle again. But make no mistake, when dealing with an addiction, large or small, making this bright line rule is itself an act of your willpower. And in the beginning, every single time you're exposed to the temptation, it will require willpower to act on your bright line rule. There may very well be examples of people who, quote, made the choice once and never looked back, end quote. But those are the rare exceptions. Most people will have to do the hard work, aided by their willpower, to make that choice again and again for a period of time, typically around a 60-day minimum. But eventually, the rule becomes a habit, a way of life, and willpower is no longer needed to keep it going. Here's the bottom line. Temptations will happen. It's unavoidable. Thinking that you can avoid temptation or beat temptation, that's the wrong way to think. As Paul said to the believers in Corinth, "Let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall." A better way to think about temptation is to have the guts to do what Rudy, the success coach, says 95% of people don't have the guts to do. Draw the hard line in the sand, and then stand your ground until the fight subsides. Remember, a better mind leads to a better life. A better mind is ruthless against the things that lure you into danger. A better mind sets crystal clear goals and then draws a very bright line. A better mind pre-commits that you will not even allow yourself to be in a situation where you can be tempted. And the end result? That better mind will always lead you to a better life.